one of these, and both of these are awesome laptops. That's all for today, folks. I'll see you all in the next. It's the age-old question, which one is better, a MacBook or a Windows laptop? Well, today we'll be comparing the absolute best from both sides, the 14-inch MacBook Pro and the Asus ROG Zephyrus G14. Let's settle this once and for all. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. In terms of looks, these two are pretty similar. They both sport a sleek, minimalistic, full aluminum body, but obviously the Zephyrus G14 is a bit flashier. It has this LED slash on the back, which can be turned off of course, that can show stuff like notifications or battery life. Stuff like this makes me miss the old Apple light-up logos a bit. I mean, those were iconic. In general, the MacBook does look just a bit more professional from the outside though. Aluminum is an awesome material, but not all aluminum is built equally. The MacBook definitely uses a bit higher grade stuff than the Zephyrus G14. Don't get me wrong, the Zephyrus is incredibly sturdy for a laptop, but it can rattle a bit at the bottom. Meanwhile, the MacBook Pro is literally just a block of aluminum. Hell, this thing will probably stop a small caliber bullet if you put it in a plate carrier. These two laptops are about the same thickness, but the MacBook Pro does weigh a little bit more than the Zephyrus G14. Like I said, both of these are absolute tanks, but the MacBook is built slightly better. The spec sheet for these two may look very different, but they're actually really similar in terms of power. The MacBook Pro has the new M4 Pro chip, which has a 12-core CPU, a 16-core GPU, and 24 GB of unified memory. The Zephyrus G14 has an 8-core Ryzen 9 CPU, a 90-watt RTX 4070 GPU, and 32 GB of RAM. Comparing these specs doesn't really make sense though, because they work very differently. Don't worry, we'll get into that later. MacBooks used to be known for their lack of ports, but the newer ones actually have quite a nice port selection. Too bad it doesn't have any USB-A ports though. So in my opinion, the G14 does win in terms of port selection, since you don't always have a dongle with you at all times. But MacBooks have MagSafe, which is their magnetic charging port. This is really nice to have, since it prevents your $2,000 laptop from being yeeted into oblivion when someone trips over your cord. And since the MacBook uses so little power, it also has a smaller charger than the G14. A much smaller charger. They both have really good keyboards. The MacBook's keys have quite a short travel distance though. It does feel good to type on, but I feel like I'm missing some key presses because of how light the keys are. The Zephyrus G14's keys have a longer travel, which in my opinion gives them some better feedback. The MacBook also has a white-only backlight, while the Zephyrus G14 has white and all the other colors of the rainbow. Of course, this is all optional. You're not forced to show a pride flag on your laptop at all times. That is an option though. Now the trackpad is where the MacBook steps it up by a lot. They both have glass trackpads, which feel very nice and premium. The big difference, however, is that the Zephyrus G14 has a regular trackpad, while the MacBook has a Force Touch vibrating touchpad. It feels like you're clicking something, but it's all just vibrations simulating a click. I cannot overstate how good these vibrating touchpads are. It's literally night and day. So yeah, the MacBook easily wins here. But their screens is where it gets very interesting. The MacBook Pro has a mini LED display, while the Zephyrus G14 has an OLED display. Now they're both really good, but the huge advantage of mini LED is that it gets as bright as the fucking sun. The G14 gets bright as well, but 500 nits is nothing compared to 1600 nits. You could easily use the MacBook outside in direct sunlight and it just wouldn't care. They both also have an anti-reflective layer on their displays, but the one on the Zephyrus G14 is actually a bit better at keeping reflections away. But that mini LED on the MacBook gets as black as the G14's OLED, which is very impressive. Sorry folks, this isn't even a competition. The MacBook's display is a lot better. The MacBook also has a better display hinge. The Zephyrus G14's hinge is okay, but it does wobble a bit when you're moving it around or typing on your lap. The MacBook's hinge is a lot tighter and it just feels like it's built way better. Now for the moment I've been waiting for, their speakers. The Zephyrus G14 has been the Windows laptop speaker king for a long time now, but the MacBook Pro sounds amazing. It has the clearest and strongest bass I've ever heard out of a laptop. And the audio just sounds very clean overall. It does lack the surround sound that the G14 speakers have, so the G14 speakers sound a lot bigger than they actually are. But in terms of just raw sound quality, the MacBook clearly wins here. It has more bass and the sound just has a lot more clarity. So boys, we finally have a new speaker king. This is a microphone test for the MacBook Pro 14-inch. This is a microphone test for the Asus ROG Zephyrus G14. The biggest difference between these two laptops, though, are their operating systems. These two have been separated since birth, and they've grown apart a lot. Time to get a bit nerdy now. Virtually every program runs on Windows, but it's not always certain if a program has a macOS version. For example, most games won't run at all on macOS, which is why gaming is nearly impossible on MacBooks. Software compatibility has improved over time, but the simple reality is that most programs are just made for Windows machines. So if you're not sure if a program that you use is supported on macOS, or if you use a lot of different programs, it might be safer to just get a Windows laptop. Now let's race these cowboys head to head and see which one is faster in some benchmarks. In Cinebench 2024, the MacBook got almost double the score of the G14 CPU-wise, but it lags a bit behind in the GPU benchmark. The same goes for Geekbench 6, where the MacBook gets almost double the score of the G14 in single-core and multi-core workload. So on average, the MacBook Pro is almost double as fast as the G14 in benchmarks, except for that GPU benchmark in Cinebench 2024. The G14 won that one. But benchmarks don't really mean anything. How do they do in real-world applications? Well, to test that, I'm going to export the same Adobe Premiere Pro project in 4K on both of them and see which one is faster. The G14 took 5 minutes and 10 seconds to export the project, while the MacBook only took 4 minutes and 40 seconds. So yeah, the MacBook Pro is faster in real-world use as well. But like I said before, a lot of benchmarks straight up just didn't start or crashed on the MacBook Pro. Now I know I said MacBooks aren't made for gaming, but this guy's performance is really impressive. So let's just see how it performs in the games that it can run compared to an actual gaming laptop. Let's start with something light, Minecraft. At 32 chunks of rendering distance, it wasn't doing so well. But after turning down the rendering distance to 20, it ran very smoothly, and it easily reached 100 FPS. On the G14 it ran a bit better, but it was actually really close. It also hovered around 100 and 110 FPS. Now for a heavier game, Rust. On the MacBook, I did have to turn the resolution down to 1200p, but it was very playable. It consistently stayed between 90 and 100 FPS, and it can probably go a lot higher. On the G14, it ran a little better though, staying between 100 and 120 FPS, but it's definitely close. So the MacBook is definitely fast enough to be able to game, but it runs exactly 3 games out of my 120 game Steam library. It's just too bad that it doesn't support many games. So yeah, obviously don't buy a MacBook if you want to game on it. It absolutely can handle them, but it just doesn't support most games. So performance conclusion, they're both really fast. The MacBook may not support every application or game, but the ones that it does run, it runs very well. The Zephyrs handle everything easily because it runs Windows. But if you need a very specific or just old application for work or for school, there's a higher chance that the Zephyrs will support it. Now you might think, well then obviously the Zephyrs is better, right? It supports more apps. Not so fast, little teacup, because the next topic changes everything. Battery life. The biggest reason why people buy MacBooks. You see, ever since 2020, Apple has been using their own chips that uses an ARM architecture. What does that mean? Well, you probably don't care. So here's a really simple explanation. ARM chips use very little power compared to regular chips in laptops. And less power draw means longer battery life. To test their battery life, I ran a YouTube video on both of these laptops with their screens at 500 nits brightness and at a 60 Hz refresh rate. The Zephyrus G14 lasted 9 to 10 hours, which is very good for a Windows laptop. But the MacBook Pro lasted 15 to 16 hours. This is exactly why people buy MacBooks. They last a lot longer. And more importantly, they have a longer battery life with intensive tasks as well. So if you do lots of work on the go, like video editing, the MacBook Pro is the easiest choice for you. Now, less power draw also means less heat, which means less noise. Both the MacBook Pro and the Zephyrus G14 stayed quiet during normal use, but they both got pretty loud in heavy workloads. The Zephyr G14 definitely gets a bit louder though. But if you buy a MacBook, you can never upgrade its internals. So you better get a good spec version of it. Too bad Apple made their upgrade options the price of a small car. Yeah, the Zephyrus definitely isn't much better in terms of upgradability, but at least you can upgrade its storage up to 4 terabytes yourself for literally 6 times less money. Which brings us to pricing. The Zephyrus G14 is quite a bit cheaper than the M4 Pro and MacBook Pro. Of course, it depends on where you live, but in most parts of the world, they're pretty similarly priced. $2,000 for a laptop is a lot, but they will both last you a very long time. It just sucks that Apple's storage prices are so criminally high. It makes any model higher than the base storage just not worth it. So, conclusion. Which one is more worth it? You're gonna hate me for this, but it depends. Both of these laptops will last you a long time, so either one is a great choice. But the simple reality is that these two laptops have different use cases. The MacBook Pro has pretty much the longest battery life of any laptop in the world, but its upgrade options are expensive and it doesn't support all software. Meanwhile, the Zephyrus G14 is a beast in sheep's clothing. It has amazing performance in a thin body, but you have to carry around this power brick, or a smaller USB-C charger of course, and it runs out of battery a lot faster. My advice is this: if you're used to Windows, stick to Windows. And if you're used to macOS, stick to macOS. Learning to use a new operating system is very time consuming. Trust me, you don't want to do that in the middle of a semester. But if that's not a problem for you, my advice is this: if you don't plan on playing games, if you do a lot of intensive work on the go, and if you know for sure that the programs you're going to use runs on macOS, get the MacBook. But if you want to play games and want to run Windows or a lot of different applications,